good evening if you are on the other side of the world. My name is Meacham. I'm your college counselor, and today we're going to be checking out your Common App essays. I got a whole bunch of people written down here. We're going to start going through them more or less in the order that I was given them. If you want to send your essay to me for a review, you can go to prepwithscore.com. There's a WhatsApp link, and you can send it to me there. Just say hi, let me know maybe who you are so I can introduce you on the stream here. I do have like a lot to do, so I don't know that we'll be able to get to more today. We'll see how it goes. We got about 2 hours today. And then from there, I have another session on September 25th. So if I don't get to your essay today, I will take a look at it then for the 25th, and we may program another session in there for October, depending on how we're doing here. But thank you all so much for being here. I'm looking forward to this. So let's just get to it. Let's get into it. I got one here from a viewer from Nepal, and let's start taking a look. Let's see what we got here. All right, this is going to be interesting. So 4 years ago, beautiful destination turned into a journey to hell. Okay, blood. All right, we got some action. Exciting. It was an accident. All right. Okay, this is pretty intense. White attire. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have a serious accident. We have 5 wires. Ooh. Okay. Oh, I see what we're doing here. I think I see what's going on. Let's. Can I make this go away? I actually want to hide this right now. Yeah. I don't know why it's not doing it. Oh well, whatever. We'll figure it out. Okay. Green wire. Nature. Okay. Interesting. And then patience through fishing. I've only ever fished once, and I was horrible at it. It was in the jungle. It does take patience. White wire sports. Okay, karate, cool. All right, I see what we're doing here. So we got like this idea of we're going to set up these different wires that talk about different aspects of the individual. I like that. I think it's an interesting way to frame the story, right? We're talking about a frame story where I have this accident and it leads me to this setting where I have these 5 different wires, and each wire is going to talk about the person. I think that's a cool structure. It's a very unique way to approach your essay. Anytime you can think of like a frame story that sort of allows you to, touch on different aspects, it's a good approach. I like that approach to essays a lot. So we got entertainment here from the red, Iron Man, Hawkeye. That's cool. Yeah, some Marvel love. I like that. That's a good, honest thing to share. Blue wire for culture and religion. Okay. This is interesting. Yeah, you got a lot of different influences there. Brown wire science. All right. And then curiosity into astrophysics and aerospace. Ooh, okay. Now, I'm curious. This says an accident caused me to contemplate the need for safer AI-enabled vehicles. I'm wondering if this is the same accident that you talked about at the beginning here. If this is your essay, if you're checking this out, there's that's the only thing right now that I'm a little bit unclear about here. So we close up with this ECG. I think it's EKG. Usually we say in English. I don't know. Maybe I'm not a medical professional. But okay, I like the structure of this essay a lot. I think this is a very innovative essay. My only concern here, and I think this is the thing that I have to emphasize a lot. If you're going to open up with a big story like that, it's really important to make sure I understand what happened here. Because when I look at this introduction, right, that is the only thing here that I'm not sure about. What actually happened with this accident? Was this a car accident? Was this a violent situation? I don't know. There's blood. You're on the road. I get the idea that maybe you got hit by a car or something, but I don't know for sure. And I think it would be good to just add a couple of details in here that really makes that clear. That would be great. And for the record, in the chat here, created by Trang, good idea. If you want to add some details as we're looking at this and maybe say some stuff in the chat, that'd be cool. I'd love to hear what the thought process was. But what I'm seeing here, so just in this particular example, I love this structure. I think it's very creative. I think it's interesting how we have these connections between different wires and different aspects of life. But my main suggestion is close out this story a little bit. Maybe that could be the new conclusion. Instead of this ECG thing, maybe you could say, okay, this car accident this time, it got me to reflect a lot. And I'm like, I value these different aspects of me, or something like that. I would like to know what exactly happened in this accident. I like that it piques my curiosity, but I want to get a little more information so I know what happened to you. Like, that's the only thing that's like unfulfilling or unsatisfying, is like, I don't know exactly what happened here. So that's the only thing. But I think this is actually really, really cool. So, all right, good stuff. I like this one. I have another one already kind of opened up here. I'm going to close that. Whoop. Oh, no, I didn't want to totally close that document, but that's fine. All right, so I have this other one called Partagi. And I'm also making sure I cross these off my list because I have so many from the list here that, I'm just trying to go through and make sure I don't miss people. All right, let's take a look at this. 18 years between the summer I was born and the summer I went looking for. Okay, cool. All right, jarred into a container, break it away, self-discovery, a pawn. Okay, you would want to say, I'll sew your mouth shut. You do want to finish, like, with sew your mouth, like, we usually need one more word there, sew your mouth shut. Which, okay, nice, strong, vivid dad threat. I like it. Okay. All right, so we're getting to this psychologist treatment. Okay. Alienation, I felt, literature, tried some different things. So we're trying to like kind of find ourselves here. We got literature, meeting with psychologists and psychiatrists, looking at like different philosophies. Okay, attachment issues. I'm gonna link that all together. That's kind of the question I'm asking about this essay. We're a little bit all over the place. And I think that does reflect an individual's process of self-discovery, right? It does take different paths. There's not exactly one clear way to go necessarily, but I'm trying to kind of understand the main idea of this story. It's not 100% clear to me. All right, so trauma. Okay, so there's something here maybe from the past, like, okay, deaths and child neglect, losing. All right. Okay, so, right, we have our parents' issues as well. Breakdown, collective intergenerational trauma. Okay, so this is interesting. I think this essay touches on a lot of different topics. I think it would be good to maybe, I feel like this is what happens sometimes when we sort of write a draft and we write as we think, right? And when we do that a lot of times, if you write as you think, then it can be a little bit disorganized, and that's normal because the human brain is not always organized, and writing is recording your brain, right? So the first time you work through an essay, I think this is like good advice for everybody to think about. When you write your first draft, you're probably doing what we sometimes call verbal vomit, where you're throwing out ideas and you're putting them down, and it's what comes next in your brain. And so your first draft really reflects that first thought process. For an essay, we want to kind of go back and work on it some more and maybe start again, but with a more focused topic. So when I look at this essay, for example, what I see here is a lot of different ideas. You know, we have this idea of like your father's influence and how he didn't have a great upbringing. We have this issue of moving to a new city, working with psychiatrists, evaluating different philosophies. So there's a lot of different sort of ideas here about your self-discovery process. I think it would be good to try to pick one or two of those and really develop them deeper. Like if the idea is, I feel like you get to this sort of idea of trauma, this moment of revelation trauma. This to me is like the main idea that you should develop because it takes you a while to get there. And so I feel like a lot of these other little ideas distract us from maybe the main idea, because we're taking a long time to get to that point of trauma. If that is really what it is, then why don't you start there? Start with that revelation. Like the moment I realized that trauma had influenced my life was the moment I began to discover myself. And then we don't need to talk so much about some of those other things that you explored that maybe didn't give you a big impact. Instead, I want to focus on that one thing that really had a major impact on you and maybe your family. Like that to me is where we can focus this essay a little bit more. And too many negative words, horror, obsession, and things like that. Like, I don't think necessarily it's bad to have that. Like, you don't have to be overly negative, but I think that the idea is that we want to zero in. We want to focus on like, what is that main idea? And we want to dedicate more time to it so that it's easier to understand ourselves. Like, for me, it takes a while for us to find that topic. And so remember, we have 650 words that we can use. This essay is sitting at 653. I think we could get rid of some of this, like, path to discovery and focus on that major stop in the journey. If you think about your journey as an individual, I compare it to like a road trip. If I want to tell you about a road trip, I'm going to think about the highlights, the main stops on the journey, the craziest things I saw or the coolest things I saw. And like, I don't need to tell you all about the drive to that destination because there probably wasn't. I mean, maybe I saw a couple things that seemed interesting for a minute, but they probably weren't the most important things. So that would be what I would say, and yes, Hassan, this live will stay up on YouTube all the time. Every time I do a live, it stays up here. So you can always check this out later. So yeah, I like some of the ideas here. I think we need to focus in more on this trauma aspect. And then this idea of like talking about mental health policy is interesting. I'm curious how maybe this connects to your goals. Like, does this connect to what you want to study? What's the connection between this and where you want to go next? I think that's always an important thing to look at. So those are some suggestions I would have for this. Maybe focus more on the trauma aspect and think a little bit more about how you can connect this information to what you want to do in the future. All right, so I got another one here. I think this is yours, created by Trang. Metamorphosis. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right, do humans go through a metamorphosis? And the whole class laughed. I've been there. I like that moment. All right. Okay. Yeah, let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. I like the little detail here of Grandpa fixing the bike. That's a nice little way to add a visual without spending too much time on that visual. That's a nice little thing. Like that's a nice touch. Okay. And now we connect more to those grandparents. That's cool. Okay. Homemade fishing rod. Neat. I like this. Okay, you say that same old personality. I'm kind of curious, like, are we talking about that? Like, that threw me off just a little bit. I'm not sure what personality trait you're referencing exactly. Because so far we've established, like, a sense of curiosity, right? There's obviously at this age in 7th grade, you wouldn't necessarily realize why that question might have seemed silly. Maybe other people understood that already wasn't going to be like the right question to ask or something. But I'm looking a little more for those personality details if you're going to say this here, but it makes me stubborn. I don't know if maybe you're referring to the grandparents' influence or your own here. All right. And then we get into some of the engineering stuff. Okay. Ooh, okay, cool. Got the internship in project management. That's neat. I like that. All right. And we get into a lot of the challenges here of working there. Working at a factory. Accidents at the factory too. That's interesting. That could be something to develop a little more here. Caterpillar. All right. I like the callback to the metamorphosis idea. Okay. Yeah. All right, this is interesting. This is interesting. I like this. All right, I'm just checking our word count. So we have 786. So we do have to do some cutting here to get this down. Yeah, Gautam, you read my mind. I was literally just, that's the first thing I check sometimes when I finish these up. I like to look at the word count and see what we got to do. So I think we have a couple of things that here that are pretty interesting and we could work on and develop a little more. So one thing I think is cool here is like, I like this bit where you touch on the grandparents and their influence in you. I think you could expand a little bit more of this, like give me a little more information about that personality traits. And because I felt like that was a little bit disconnected. Like I didn't quite understand what you were going for there. And then we have a pretty abrupt change to this idea about engineering and architecture, right? So I'm wondering if like, did you discover this during the gap year? I'm thinking yes, because of this date that you mentioned. So it might be good to like take this out and just, this would stay more connected, like the gap year and then this happening, this idea that you've discovered this option of architecture through this experience of the steel structures thing, like that would be cool. I would probably get rid of the dialogue to save some space. And I would jump to, you know, just summarize that. Like you applied for a competitive internship, you got in, and then you can talk a little bit about some of the things that you got to do, which I think is good. It's you don't want to spend too much time because remember, they can see this in your CV. They can see this in other aspects of your application. So we don't want to spend too much time talking about activities that we already referenced somewhere else, or we can explain more somewhere else. It's good to mention it, I think, but I want to keep the focus on you. And I think that you could talk about some of the growth, like you talk a lot about functions, you know, like what you learned, right? Which is good. Like, okay, that a small error can cause people to work overtime. Accidents push you to check progress. Like maybe think a little bit more about how your perception of this work changed. Like what matters in that job? What aspects of that job are important? What do you realize that you need to develop or that you have that will make you good in this field? So instead of just thinking about the specific functions, think about the lessons. Think about how that would apply to your future education as well and what you want to learn while you're at university. That to me is where you could develop that a little bit more. I like this connection back to the idea of transformation, but I'm not sure what completely transformed in you. Because we have this reference to like curiosity at the beginning, some stubbornness in the middle, and now you performing well in this job. So that's what I think we need a little bit more of like your personality so we can see what changed, and a little bit less of the activity or like the development of that activity. That's where you could cut words and then probably make some more space for some more personal growth. You know, I get what you're saying about the obstacles, right? Like, okay, so looking at the obstacles in your internship, like, yeah, I get that. I think that, you know, what those obstacles are isn't as important as what you learn from them. Obstacles take many different forms, but the lesson you get at the end is the more important thing. Courage, being stubborn and decisive when you decide to take a gap year, I get what you're saying, but then for me to understand that from the essay, I need to know if like, did people resist that decision? Is it not a common decision where you are from? Was there criticism? Like, you know, maybe give me a little more context so I can understand that your decision to do the gap year actually maybe was hard. Like, you know, you had to make a tough decision. So that could be useful as well, because it doesn't quite come through in the essay as it is right now. But I think that you have some really good ideas here. And I think that the writing is really good. Something I wanted to point out that I like about this, paragraph length. Something I encourage people to do more is shorter paragraphs today. And that's just a reflection of how most writing is becoming. Like most of us, if you look at the articles you read on your phone, since everybody uses phones now, paragraphs have gotten smaller so they can fit into a screen. And like, while that's not a requirement for writing, it is more common today. And I think that it's what your people are used to reading. So if you have like huge paragraphs, it can seem a little overwhelming or a little like, ooh, you know, like too much for the people reading. So I like shorter paragraphs these days. I think it helps to like make your stuff more readable for the viewers. So cool. I like this. I think there's a lot of good ideas here. I think that we just need to shift the focus a little bit more towards your personality and its evolution, and a little bit less in the direction of like what you did and what happened. All right, let me grab some other ones here. I gotta get the next one. Give me a second. So, all right, we're making good progress. I like this. All right, I got more phone numbers here that I'm typing in to figure out. All right, yeah, this is okay. We're gonna do Yo Jack. Oh wait, this is actually really short. All right, so I don't know if this is for. All right, hang on. I'm gonna skip this one because I didn't take a good look at this. This looks like a supplemental, and I just want to focus on Common App stuff today. But I can get back to you personally. All right, let's take a look at this. Oh, this is Gotham. This is you, man. All right, you're here. You're in the house. Let's do this. All right. So make it bigger. Switch your screens. Let's do it. All right. So, all right. Not made of developments, but of devices and technologies. You sound like a cyborg. People call me a hacker. All right. Let's take a look at this. Okay. Bedside monitor. Oh, whoa. That's pretty hardcore. Okay. Interesting. All right. Dengue, scrub typhus. I don't even know what that is. Jeez. Okay. This is an interesting story so far. This is an interesting story so far. You have my attention. All right, we're jumping around time. I don't know if you've ever read Kurt Vonnegut, but this has some Kurt Vonnegut vibes. All right. All right. Speakers, I know they've mentioned. All right. Interesting. I'm kind of, all right. So this one maybe needs to be a little more concrete. Like it feels like you were trying to like design something as a kid. The speakers, like, was this something you were trying to work on, like a cable or something that you were making like at that age? Like I kind of think I get it, but I'm not 100% sure. And I would like it to be a little bit more concrete. Like you say, this unknown invention, random connection. Like, I don't know if it's random necessarily. Because like, all right, okay, connected my mobile phone to speakers, but also my heart to the technology. Okay, so I get what you're doing here a little bit. Yeah. All right, you're making like a cable and stuff. I think it would be like maybe a little better instead of like having these like ideas of random and unknown, like maybe focus on that desire to solve the problem, that desire to like fix something or, you know, resolve the frustration of not being able to set up those speakers. Like I guess maybe just be a little more concrete with it. But this is cool. All right. 63 pairs of eyes. All right. I'm also the hacker. Okay, what did you do? Oh, okay. Hacked into my professor's Gmail account. Ooh, okay. All right, we got to address this. This is going to be one of those controversial things to include in an essay. All right. Okay. All right. Let me take a look at my word count here. Where are we at? 583. Okay, so we got space to work with. All right. This is interesting. So first of all, I think it's cool that you have like this structure where you're jumping around a little bit in time, showing me a few different highlights from life. You know, we have this like really heavy experience and sort of a realization of wanting to be around computers, and connecting that to like the ICU monitor next to you is kind of an interesting thing. Like that definitely got my attention, and I like that sort of moment of realization. And then I like this idea of going back to a couple of other experiences from a younger time in your life. So that's cool. I think the structure is interesting. Now, I want to talk about this thing here, because now a lot of people, and this applies to more than just hacking your teacher's account. Let's talk about, should you talk about something that maybe was unethical or was wrong, or a time you got in trouble or broke a law or something? Like, a lot of people will tell you never to do that, to never say this. And I think a lot of people believe you should play it safe with your essays. I can tell you right now that most of the time, universities are not so strict and uptight about these things. Like, most admission officers are cool people. Most of the people reading your essays, like, they were young too. They made mistakes. They understand. I think the important thing is to like contextualize, though. If you're going to talk about something that you did that maybe wasn't like the best thing, can you give a little more context and show me maybe what the impact was? Like, what did you do with your professor's Gmail account? That's what I want to know. Because like, if you just hacked it for the sake of hacking it because you wanted to see if you could, like, okay, that's not exactly like the worst thing in the world. That actually is kind of interesting. And this here, if it ends positively, that's a good sign. But I would like to know what precisely you did with this. And then that would influence my decisions a little bit, because if you talk about hacking your teacher's email and then like the truth is that you sent like a dirty picture to all your classmates or something, like that would be maybe something I wouldn't include in my essay. But if you did it like genuinely because you're like, I want to see if I can hack this guy, and I came clean, I admitted it right away, I didn't like do anything bad, okay, that changes things, So with those sorts of situations, I don't think it's bad to necessarily include those. I just think it's important to contextualize and make sure that the reader understands why you did it and what happened. And since you have another 70 words you can use here, you've got room, you've got the space to like explain this. So I would encourage you to give more detail about that and explain it a little more, I think. I think that would be good, And yeah, otherwise I like what you got going on here. Something else I want to mention about the formatting. I don't know that I would bold these words too much. Like, you don't have to necessarily bold like Gmail or speakers or bedside monitor. Like, it kind of, it draws my attention to those things, but in a way that kind of distracts me a little bit. So I usually recommend like it's fine for this, like this age 17, age 8. I think that's a good way to use formatting to kind of, draw my attention to these different scenarios. But then for the actual words inside, like I wouldn't necessarily do that. Okay. Yeah. So if you didn't do anything with his account, yeah, I know I just gave you a bad idea, right? I say that because I've had situations with students where things like that have happened. So, I think you got to remember that like, if I present the possibility of doing something I shouldn't have done, it could be interpreted a lot of different ways. And if someone interprets it the wrong way, that could be bad for you. So try not to leave that room for interpretation. That's what I would recommend. So for the age 8 part, yeah, I would just maybe like change a little bit of these unknown random words. Like I would change some of this stuff here to more focus on like your thought process. What were you thinking? Like, dad comes home with newly borrowed speakers, and like, what was the problem? What did you decide to do? Like, get a little more concrete into you. Right now, we have a lot of reactions of other people, which is nice. But like, I want to know what your thought process was at 8 years old. Did you look at this and go, I think I can fix this. I think I can figure this out. Like, and you started soldering cables and stuff, like, maybe that would be more engaging, I think, here. But otherwise, I like what we got. I think this is interesting. So, good stuff. All right. So, who's next? Let's go over here. All right. Got another 9, 4, 5, 3. Okay. Hang on. Let me copy this into some text here. All right. Hang on. This came through WhatsApp, so it's got a bunch of spaces. So I'm just deleting some spaces so that it's a little easier to read here. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's check this one out here. And do I have this is Abhinav. Abhinav sent this one into me here. So, yeah, let's see what we got. All right. So we got a dream right off the bat. I like that. To witness Mars rings firsthand. Wait. Okay. I was going to say, I don't think there's rings on Mars, but they're going to form in about 50 million years. Okay. Interesting. All right. Uh-huh. Phobos better be feared. Afraid. You would want to say afraid here. Better be afraid about this one or scared of this one. Yeah. Feared is like, would mean that he is feared by others, I guess maybe could work here, but it does. If you're saying that he's going to disappear, he would be afraid of disappearing, not feared by others. All right. This is okay. Respect. You've got a tattoo of an event that's going to happen in 50 million years. If that's for real, that's pretty sweet, dude. That's very, very cool. Damn. So, all right. Staircase to the moon is impossible. Uh-huh. Okay, but astronomy. I should send you to my business partner. He thinks that the moon landing was fake. All right, so, all right, we've got some issues in the family, though, that made it difficult. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Balvikas classes, Casey Road, Edge of Time. All right, telescoping and stuff. And then the school wasn't quite what you're looking for. All right. I think this is interesting. I like the way that you present your dream, and I love the commitment right here. Like this to me is like, okay, that's about as committed as you can get to studying a certain major, my friend. This is like, yeah, right away, if I read this, I'll be honest. I'm going to be like, all right, I want to see this tattoo. Like, this is intense. And it says a lot about your commitment to your major. I mean, what else can I say? If astrophysics and like astronomy are things that interest you and you're willing to go that far, I believe you. You know, you have my attention. Now, one thing I will say about this, watch out when you use we. When you say we, you include the reader, and including the reader can be good in some cases, but when you do that with something very specific like this, you run the risk of alienating the reader. Like if the reader didn't ever dream about building a staircase to the moon, then my reaction as a reader is, well, that was you, not me. Hey, no, maybe that's not something I ever wanted, you know? So like, I would rephrase this. I like addressing the reader, but try not to put words or thoughts into the reader, right? Like ask the reader a genuine question. Like, have you ever thought about how you could get to the moon? Have you ever thought about building a staircase to the moon? At least that's neutral. That gives the reader the choice about whether they say yes or no to your question. Your question here is really more like forcing the statement onto the reader. So if you're going to address the reader, just be careful with that, because like I could see somebody being like, well, no, that wasn't me. And now you're creating a negative reaction to your question versus a neutral reaction or a positive one. I like that you've gotten into, you know, like some of the family issues that have made things difficult and the school issues that have made things difficult. One thing I will say here is I think some of the, like you have a little bit that you can cut where it's 686. I think you could probably cut this out, this grade 6 bit. It kind of goes backwards in a way. Like I think we could focus instead on, you know, maybe the trials connect more to this. So instead of this little flashback to childhood, what I might say is like, okay, mom said this was impossible. Maybe say there were other obstacles beyond physics, right? There were obstacles in my family. There were obstacles in my education. Like, it wasn't just the physical impossibility of building a staircase to the moon. It's that the steps that I needed to climb were broken and damaged and dangerous. Like, try to use maybe that metaphor of the staircase to help talk about some of those problems, because I feel like we're missing some transitions into some of those issues. So it goes kind of abruptly, like it's jerky. We're going back and forth. And I want more smooth transitions into those ideas. And so I think you can cut out a little bit more. Like, you've established that you have this very clearly. We don't need to go back to the past to learn about it. I think the telescope thing is kind of cool too. And I like that you keep this, right? I think you should keep that there. And it contrasts well with the school's curriculum. Like, you are now going beyond what your class is offering, right? Which is good. So I think, and now the last thing here, I think we talked about this a little bit before you sent this over, but this PS is going to be a little awkward. So what I would say here is like you say, Chandrasekhar, limit myself. It's unclear exactly like what that refers to for the average reader. I think would be a little tricky to figure out. And I see what you're doing here with this reference, but it's still not 100% clear to me, like what that might mean. I think you could probably just take that away, to be honest. I understand you want to make a reference, but maybe do it in a better way that it's a little more clear so that I understand exactly what that means. Like, that's your conclusion. People always remember the first thing and the last thing you say. Your first paragraph and your last paragraph is what stands in people's memory the most. So you want to make sure those parts are really clear and easy to understand. If they're not, you're going to leave the person feeling a little confused. And the last thing you want is for their final thought to be confusion. You want their final thought to be clarity. So we want to be careful about how we finish those essays, especially. So that's one of the things I love about your opening. Like, your opening as something super memorable, right? But then that conclusion is leaving me a little bit confused. So I would suggest maybe, changing that up a little bit. Yeah, the first part, last part thing is always important to remember. It applies even to like the SAT. Like the first part of a paragraph and the last part of a paragraph tell you the main ideas, because we tend to remember the first part and last part. So our writing reflects that as well. But overall, this is cool. This is interesting. I like this one. Let's see what else we got here. Who's next? All right. Let me go to Nilo. Nilofar was with us in our workshop on Tuesday and sent over their essays. So we're going to check that out here. All right. And for those of you who have sent me your essays recently, like, again, I got a list, so I'm adding yours to my list. If I run through all of these in the time we have today, then we will start pulling more from the ones that are being sent in now. But yeah, we got a lot to do. All right, let's take a look at this one. As a girl will seek control of justice. Okay, very clear up front. I like this. All right. Very concrete introduction, very clear. I like it. It's direct and to the point. It's just getting right to the issues that this person wants to solve. I like that a lot too. I think sometimes it's good to do that. We don't always have to have like clever, colorful story introductions. We can just go straight to like what I want to do and get to the point. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, and Omar, congrats on the 1430, man. That's great. All right. Volunteering, gain valuable insights into important social issues. Okay. I think it's always good to use more concrete language. So if I say important social issues, like what exactly? Let's think about what exactly and their significance. Like, I think it's, good to get into the details of those, right? And we still have some room to work with here. So root cause, again, like social problems. Like, problems is an abstract word. I can't picture problems. I want to be able to visualize what you're talking about. So when you look at those words, ask yourself, like, can I make those words more concrete? Can I make those words clearer, right? It is simple, Gautam. I agree. It is simple. But simple's not always bad. And I think that it's important to understand the mind of a typical American person. Like, we tend to be more direct. We tend to be more, to the point. And other cultures aren't necessarily that way. I see that a lot here working with Peruvians. Like Spanish as a language encourages people to be very wordy, to use a lot of words to say something. And that like a lot of times the perception is like more words is more better, when that is not necessarily true. And in an American context, like more words, it's like, are those words doing something? Are they contributing, or are they just filling space, So that's something I watch out for. Like, it's not bad to be simple and direct. We're very heavily influenced by Ernest Hemingway in English, and Hemingway wrote very short sentences, very simple language. He felt like you should be able to use the simplest word that makes the most impact. So there's nothing wrong with that being kind of basic in a way. I don't think this is a bad start. It establishes very clearly what this person's focus is, what their origin is. And I like this because I want to point something out here. Again, like your choice of major can have a big impact on your possibilities abroad. And if you're someone who's looking for like big scholarships, this is the kind of thing that does attract bigger scholarships. Like universities are more invested in people who they think will return that investment into their country and into their society. So going right to that point here for Niloufar's essay in Afghanistan, like I think that's not a bad approach at all. Now, I do think we need to be more concrete here. We need to know exactly what the issues are. All right, so analyzing data, administrative tasks. Okay, so one thing I think is happening here a lot, though, we are getting into what I see as a common mistake with essays, which is like regurgitating the CV, sort of going through activity after activity after activity, and there's nothing wrong with talking about your activities, but I need to know more about you. And I think sometimes the activity focus takes away from the individual. Like I understand you care about these things. You've established that. And I understand you've worked at these social centers and worked with girls. That's great. But now I want to know more about like, maybe tell me one of the most important experiences you had from that time. Like tell me about a person that you worked with that you remember really clearly and how it impacted you, or give me a scene that you saw while volunteering that like struck you and left you changed forever. Like those are the things that will stand out more other than a summary of your activities. Like a summary is always going to be more general, and I want you to get specific at some point in your essay. So while I understand that like you've done all these really cool activities and that's great, and it makes perfect sense, I want to know more about these like, specific experiences, not just mentioning all of them. Okay. So that would be the main thing I would improve in this essay is like, okay, you talk about going into United People Global and like Girl Up. I know about that program. It's great. Awesome. But like maybe pick one or two of these things and go into more detail. It's always better for us to go deep one or two times than to go superficial many times, right? Like I only have 650 words, and I would rather you dedicate, half of those to one really profound experience than to touch a little bit on a bunch of experiences that don't get developed in depth. So for me, it's like, because each one just feels like it's sort of telling me the same thing I already knew. By this point, once I'm here at this social centers and stuff, like I understand that you've done these things. I want more details. I don't want more of the same kinds of experiences. And we don't have to touch on like, oh, okay, I learned to analyze data. Like that's good. Okay. But I want to know, again, something really specific about your experience. Right. So that's sort of what I think about this. Anthony, your question about, is it safe to share? Listen, I'll be honest here. Let's talk about that for just a second. Other people ask me that about sending their essays. If you don't feel comfortable sending it and having it put up here, don't do it. But the odds of somebody stealing your essay, I think, are pretty low. I mean, first of all, they're going to have to sit here and like pause this screen and see every word. And I'm going through it pretty fast, and they're going to have to like hand copy it. Secondly, then what are the odds that they apply to the same universities you do And then thirdly, what are the odds they do that and you both are from the same region and are both being reviewed by the same individual? And then what are the odds that somebody notices and cares? And like, I think the chances of that actually happening and being a problem are very, very slim. I don't encourage people to just post their essays online because someone does. I mean, in that case, someone lazy could just copy paste your essay and send it in. And, it could be an issue. But honestly, like, I don't think that would be a problem. I've never actually heard of anybody getting in trouble for like a copied essay because it's really hard for them to like actually prove that. Like, again, they would have to have like both of them around the same time to even notice. Like most of these colleges are going through thousands of applications. They're not like, if they see one that feels familiar, it might stand out and be like, I think I might have seen this, but like probably not enough for them to stop and go, oh, I'm going to reject both of these two people automatically. Like it's really not, a big risk. And honestly, the other factor that really matters, these are personal essays. Like for someone to copy this essay, they would have to have a very similar experience, very similar major, very similar interests. Like somebody with those ideals is probably not going to do that. So I wouldn't worry about it, but it's a good question. All right. So like, yeah, the specific, again, examples about specific experiences and stuff. Like I want to think about the details. Like if I were to talk about my own experience, for example, teaching English, right? Like I could talk about how I've worked with so many different kinds of people, basic students, wealthy students and businesses, poor people, everything. Like I could talk about everything, right? Or I could pick like one student that mattered, somebody who like I had a really close connection with, and talk about how that was a meaningful, like the first time I ever worked with someone who was suicidal, okay, at the risk of being demonetized for using that word. Like that is something that I actually had to deal with. And the school was not being supportive of that person and was not doing what they should be doing to help that person. So I had to kind of risk my position because I had to take a step beyond what my job would allow. And I did that anyway. And I helped that person, and that person is now studying in Italy with a full ride scholarship for a master's in arts because she had so much talent. And like, it just killed me that she was really, really depressed and dealing with a lot of issues. And I wanted to help her figure out how to get out of the country and get into a better environment. Like we actually applied to universities in Korea together. And she got in and stuff. So like, this is the thing. I'd rather talk about that experience with that person than a big summary of my teaching experience. I would share that one thing that really taught me like what education's about and gave me an opportunity to show some courage and like resilience, because everyone around me, all the professionals around me were telling me, hey, you're messing up. You're taking too much risk. You should be safer. You're going to get fired. You're going to lose your job. And 2 years later, I did lose that job for similar reasons, for defending my students, for helping them out. But like, I don't care about that. If I lose that job because I took a risk to do what I think is right, fine. That's okay. And I'd rather tell that story than just a general story about being a teacher, something to think about. So yeah. All right, let's move on. If yours is not a personal statement, I may look at it. I was going mostly for like the Common App personal statements today. But let's see. All right, so that was Neela Fars. All right, I got from Rebecca. I'm going to grab Rebecca's here. Rebecca's actually a student here at SCORE. We're helping her out with her stuff. So let's open up hers, see what she's working on. She's working with one of our essay experts, so she's going to have a little more time to review this and stuff. But I want to see what she's got so far. I haven't looked at her work yet. I usually check everything that comes through our system, but this is a rough draft, so let's see. All right, so hadn't taken her on a trip. Disney World. She wanted to go to Disney World. I like that. All right. Okay. All right. All right, so looking at Disney World, and now, an exchange student. Okay, so a very different. All right, I like that setup. This is an interesting setup. So we got to set up with like Disney World, right? Like the first trip abroad is going to be Disney, but then we've got this contrast of being a German exchange student, which is a pretty big difference from going to Disney World. I like that. All right. And what this means. Okay. Oh, I love this essay so much. I love you, Rebecca. This is exactly what I say all the time here in Peru. We have a problem with this where like students are just not independent. And I always say that like studying abroad is one of the best ways to develop that. And I think it's so important to show this in your essays and stuff if you can. Yeah. Yeah. This is real. This is very real. When you go abroad, this is what happens. By the way, this would go in here because it's the end of your sentence and the end of her sentence. Okay. Yeah, so getting into some of the positives now, like some of the things you learned by working with these other students, sort of, all right, we had the downs, the lows of, you know, missing home, missing mom, but then growing a little bit more, building friendships, and then wanting to study abroad. I love it. I think it makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I like this closing line. Hang on. You can't quite see it because I'm in the way. Let me move this up. The scary news is you'll be on your own now, but the cool news is you'll be on your own now. Yeah. I really agree with a lot of what this is saying personally, so I might be biased, but like, this is cool. This is what I like to see. I mean, so something that you can do in your essays that I think is always good to do is show the university that you're ready to be on your own. Show the university that you're ready to live abroad. It's not easy, okay? And if you've never been abroad before, you might not have a point of reference. But like, I think a lot of times the thing they want to see is that security, that confidence that like, I know I can do this. I can handle being abroad. I can handle living on my own. Like I'm ready for it because it is a challenge. And there's a lot of people that don't make it. There's people that go back home. There's people that, you know, don't overcome that phase of missing home, missing family, or adapting to life independently. And I think that colleges are always looking for people who show that readiness, especially for international students. Like, are you going to come here and succeed, or are you going to come here and crumble? And that's a worry. That's something that every international admissions officer keeps in their mind. They're thinking like, if I admit this person, are they going to be able to handle it? Are they ready for this? Can they really do it? Are they mature enough? And so I think this essay showing like someone's experience abroad and how it has impacted their readiness and their ability to go abroad in the future is a really good approach. It's not an overly complicated, essay, but I think it transmits a really solid message of like, you know, my experience abroad was totally different from what I had envisioned, but I adapted to it. And that makes me as a reader feel confident that Rebecca is going to be able to like handle it while she's abroad in the United States. So I think that's solid. I think that's solid. And I didn't catch the Taylor Swift reference, RJ. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm bad with Taylor Swift references. I don't, you know, I'm not a Swiftie. So I guess if that was, I don't know where that was, but I guess you got the singing "See You Again." Is that where it was? I don't know. Or this. You'll have to tell me. But yeah, this, you know, Gautam, you're right. This is our story. This is a shared experience for international students. And I think it's something that if you can transmit in some way, that's great. Yeah. All right, cool. Maybe I should listen to Taylor Swift then if that last line is like, you know, her thing. I like that. That was cool. Okay. Let me go ahead and grab another. Let's see here. An Elusive Dream is the title of this one. This was sent to me a while ago. Let's take a look here. All right. So I think we have some things we can learn from right away. All right. So this is, first of all, I just want to start with my initial observations. Anytime I get something like this, I'm going to have one quick observation. I think we all know what it is. We have the wall of text. Okay. The wall of text is something that we want to avoid. We don't want to have a wall of text as much as possible. Ana Maria, you can go to prepwithscore.com, write us on WhatsApp, or if you already have the WhatsApp number of Score, you can send it there and I will add it to my list. Okay, so we don't want to have a big wall of text. We need paragraphs. Like I said, shorter paragraphs today are probably going to be better, So I'm going to go through this and see maybe where I would put some paragraphs, right? Like, so we got the sound of church bells in the mosque. Okay. Brief moment, sip some tea. Decide to go for a walk. Greeted by fellow neighbors and villagers. Breeze stroked my hair. All right, so we get a lot of good descriptions in here. Like, I like the writing. Now, this could be a good place to break a paragraph. I also think, like, maybe this. You know, like, here's good places to break this up. So we're telling the story. We got this, like, waking. We're, you know, sipping some tea. This, like, I would imagine you sip some tea and you pause. That's a good place to insert that break because we're pausing. We're sipping our tea and thinking about life. And now, okay, we go for a walk. And, all right, we got this rose. Set that up. And now we got a shriek from the distance. That's a good place to have a break. All right. All right. A well. A child had fallen into a well. It's like some Lassie stuff. That's a reference none of you would get. That's way before your time. That's like almost before my time. Lassie was a dog, and there was always the joke that like Timmy would fall into the well, and then Lassie would come and rescue Timmy by finding adults and being like, ruff, ruff, ruff. And Lassie would, you know, they'd be like, what's going on? Did Timmy fall into the well? And then, yeah, they would find Timmy. And they all lived happily ever after. All right, so I got distracted thinking about Lassie. All right, so we're talking about locals, free the boy, all right? Welcoming suggestion, I'm going to take care of his plan. But okay, so this is a little vague. Like, I'm not sure what this suggestion is or what they tried to do. And we got the different religious figures. All right, so we have this whole, all right, so we have this whole experience. And then here we go. All right, you write this down in your diary. And power goes out. Glamorizing a life painted by it. All right, so it's unclear to me what this is trying to say about you. All right, this is the thing here. Like, this essay needs to focus more on you. This has an experience that you relate, but it doesn't really get personal. And while I think that experience is interesting, I'm curious what impact it really had on you and what would be like, you know, what would be the impact of this experience? You still have 250 words, but right now, most of these words are not about you. All right. And I like to sometimes encourage you guys to do this, to highlight stuff that is about you. Right. And then notice the difference. Right. So like, this is stuff about the writer here. Right. And this is stuff about the writer here. This idea of going for a walk and some of the villagers and stuff. Right. This is about you. And now this is also a little bit like, you know, like I was wondering, were we going to get back to this rose? Is there something about this that is important? Like, we talk about you and doing this, but we don't know why. And then really most of this is a story that's not about you, right? You're telling about other people, men from the community. Okay, there's a little bit of like a reflection here, right? And a little bit of what you did, but that's about it. So a lot of this essay isn't focusing on you, and it's a personal statement. So we need to do that. All right. Yeah. And no, I'm not going to delete the video. Don't worry. All my lives stay up. Like, you'll be able to watch this in post. No worries. Okay. So that would be my main thing here. I think we need to replant this essay a little bit, like start from scratch. Like, what is something about you that you want to share? And, you know, if you're going to share a story about something you saw or something you experienced, it has to connect back to you. We have to think about, like, what did that mean to you? Did you stop and like reflect on the severity of like the human condition and how life is precious? And did you feel like that boy stuck in a well? Like, what's the connection between this story and your life? That is always important to make sure is clear. So here we have more words we can use. We need to connect to you. And I think that we could probably reduce a little bit of this story and focus more on its connection to the individual. All right. And with that, my first sheet of sticky notes is done. So let's go to the next sheet here. Let's start working on some more. I love that all of y'all have sent me so many essays, keeping me busy. All right. Let's see here. This one got a PDF. Let's bring this over here. All right. Embiggen. All right. Here we go. All right. So this one was sent to me a few days ago by Said. All right, Saeed, probably. I'm not great with pronouncing names from other countries. I apologize. All right. Various identities in different aspects of my life, different perceptions from different people. Mother, scholar, friends, comedian. I like this. Okay. Animes, English teachers, Bookworm. Okay, that's kind of cool. We're presenting some different facets of your personality, some different aspects of you. I think that's always good. Yeah, Bento, just go ahead, prepwithscore.com, find the WhatsApp link, send it over on WhatsApp, and I will add it to my list. Cannot claim all these completely. There's one that unites them, a love for stories. All right. I like that you found like a common thread or a common thing between your interests here. All right. Life doesn't always. Okay. Heroes miraculously recover, but yeah, life is not that way. Okay. My condolences for Dad. That's a tough situation. Okay. Working out of fear. Interesting. Heroes. Ooh, I like this. This is good. I like this essay a lot. This is really good. This is a really solid essay. I don't have an exact word count here because it is a PDF and it doesn't let me like easily count these words, but it looks about right. It feels about 650. I think we're okay there. This is really good. What I like about this, again, simple language, which makes it easy to follow at the beginning. Like, again, we're not using complex language. This just feels like a natural person talking to me, which is something I like. Again, we're not trying to impress people with our vocabulary or like show off every word that we know. We want to just, be real, be ourselves. And if that is you, if you like to, use a lot of colorful language and stuff, okay. If it should feel natural then. But I feel like this is a well-written essay from the fact that like it just, it gets to the point. It's pretty like clear. One thing I would say is you could diversify sentence structure a little bit here. Like we have an I believe. You could probably turn this into a single compound sentence. I believe the stories, they're real life events, and maybe, I don't know, it feels a little repetitive here. And something else I would suggest, and this is something I see a lot in writing, since I like the content of this essay, I want to focus a little more on the craft of writing. A lot of times we use what's called like filter verbs. So like, I realize that, I believe in. Now, believe in can work, but like when you notice I realize that, or I find myself, those words sort of distance us from the point we're trying to make. So for example, instead of saying, I realize that life doesn't always offer the neatly packaged happy endings, I could just say, life doesn't always offer the neatly packaged happy endings, right? So I don't like, because my focus is that lesson, not the fact that I realized it. It's like, I want to emphasize that point that I learned, that thing that I began to understand. So by removing the I realize that, I put out that statement there in a stronger way, and it actually gives it more impact, and it saves me 3 words, which is convenient. So something to consider sometimes, like, even here, like I vividly remember the nights, like you could just say she would stay up until morning beside my father. Like instead of putting this through this context, right, through your eyes, just say it, just paint the picture, tell me it, and I will understand it. Because if obviously this is implied, if you didn't see this and you didn't remember it, then you wouldn't say it. So saying that you remember it actually doesn't add anything to the essay. And so this is something I recommend a lot when you already have your work kind of figured out. Start looking for those extra filler words that you can cut out. And that will free up more space maybe for you to add some other details and make it even better. Because like for me, I think this is great. And trying metamorphosis is fine. Like there's nothing wrong with talking about that. That's, a scientific concept that everybody understands. And I think that it's, a core theme of your essay. So that's fine. But like here, I'm just looking at maybe what terms could I cut out that will actually make the impact stronger, right? And what else? Look, like on that same note, yeah, All right. I think we're pretty good here. So overall, I really like what I see here in this essay. It has a nice confident ending. I like the connection between your interests and the idea of narrative and like how stories in real life are different, but also understanding what that means for you as a person. Like, I think this is a great essay. It's really, really solid. Again, now bang, if you cut out those filler words, it means that I have more space to do something meaningful with those words. Like, ask yourself, do I need this word? Is this word adding to the value of my essay? Is it contributing to the narrative? You don't necessarily have to use all 650, but I would say that if I have an essay that's at 640 and I can remove 30 words that are kind of useless, then that's now 30 words I can use for something more meaningful. Maybe a couple extra descriptions or details, maybe one more reflection about life, so understand the economy of words. Like, when you can use more words, like to the best of your ability, that's great. More words just to have filler does not help. It's diluting the concentration of your essay. I like to think of it that way, like a liquid, right? If I dilute the beverage, like if I have a Coca-Cola and I put water in it, it's not going to taste as good, right? Okay, you'll say, well, you got more to drink. Yeah, but if all of it doesn't taste as good now. So I'd rather have a good concentrated beverage, something that tastes really good and has a clear, strong flavor, versus something that has been watered down by extra words. And that makes it easier for those, important things to stand out. So that's what I would say. And you're welcome, Abin. Thanks for checking it out and for sending your stuff in. I love it. All right, let's go to the next. Let's see here. All right. Yep, this is the next on my list. Personal statement 5. Somebody's been working on a few different versions. I like it. Let's see what we got. All right. Personal statement 5. Let's see. This is from Fatima. I always like the name Fatima because Fatima is a really common name here in Latin America and Peru, and also in like the, in other parts of the world. So it's kind of funny to me. All right. Okay. Reeks. Ew. Smells bad. All right. Okay. Environmental pollution. All right. Garbopolis. All right. Garpols. All right. So, talking about this idea of like garbage and pollution. Interesting. In Kabul. All right. I like you kind of made up your own word here. That's kind of an interesting move. I like it because it's like, You're going to leave an impression on the reader for sure by having your own language in here a little bit. Like, they might remember this term, it's kind of cool. It makes for an interesting detail that nobody else can have. All right. So looking for some solutions, some of the reasons why it's a problem. How can we make a machine maybe? Okay. And obviously, yeah, this is an issue where you're from. Okay. All right, then we kind of talk about the climate change thing. All right, so we get into a little bit of this Green Earth March, something you could do to take action, right? Small fraction, that's okay. All right, so I think this is interesting. I like your Garpols thing. I think it's kind of cool. What I will say is that it does feel like you change the focus a little bit abruptly to the general issue of climate change, right? So we start out with this idea of like garbage being in your city and it smells bad and it's like, you don't like it, obviously. And that seems to be an inspiration for you in terms of like, it's something that got you to think about environmental issues and got you to think about, climate change and got you to think about taking action to resolve those issues. But I guess what does kind of stand out to me is like, you sort of abandon that issue here, kind of like, and then move into another issue. So you spend a lot of time talking about the garbage problem, and then you sort of abandon it in the middle. And I'm kind of curious, like, did you ever go back to that? Did you actually come up with any initiatives to clean up garbage? Did those lead you to do the other initiative with Green Earth where you focused more on the bigger picture of climate change? Could you maybe connect it better and show how, like,
you realize that by focusing on garbage, you were really just focusing on a small local problem. And you realize that you needed to think bigger, that you needed to like focus on a bigger issue, which is climate change globally. Like, I kind of want to understand, because right now it feels like you sort of quit, kind of like you quit on the idea of garbage because you couldn't figure out a solution, and then you shifted to another thing. So I don't love that feeling in an essay. I would like to feel like maybe you channeled that frustration, or you realized that you needed to do something bigger. Like, I want to understand, I want a more positive spin on the transition from this garbage issue to the bigger issue, because it feels like you're really going to build a whole essay around that garbage issue. And then it takes a turn in the middle and sort of goes in a very different direction. And it leaves me feeling a little bit like, I wanted to hear the rest of that stuff. I was wondering what happened with that, and if I'm going to finish more focusing on climate change and like your efforts to, raise awareness and take action about that, maybe it would be better to keep the whole essay focused on that, So, do admission officers think about values that one possesses? I think so. I think that's an important thing. I think mostly what you got to think about too is like, universities look to see that you are aligned with them and what they do and what they care about. I encourage a lot of students to check out like the motto of universities, check out the values statements for specific faculties or for the university as a whole, and ask yourself, like, do you think you are genuinely aligned with that motto, with those values? Because if you are, like, if you align well with those values, then it should naturally be obvious. Like, it will be clear. As soon as you write, they will see that in you, right? And you will have chosen your university wisely. If you don't really match up with those values or don't match up with that motto, maybe it's not the best place for you to apply, because they're looking for different kinds of people. They're looking for different individuals, and that's okay. Again, there are lots of universities, and it's important to choose the ones that fit with you, not just, this is the number one ranked university in this subject or something. Like, I want you to pick a university because in reality, you will fit in well. You will go well with what they want to do. That's what you should try to do. So I think that it's not so much that they have a list of values and they check them off and go, oh, he has this, oh, he doesn't have this. I think it's more like a feeling, right? If you work in admissions at a university for a while, you know what kind of person you're looking for. It's hard to articulate that sometimes, but you know who will fit in, who will have the right values for that university. And so if you are picking the right universities, they will feel that more. And I think it will help you a lot. So now, using AI, let me talk about that real quick. So while I was at my conference in Miami, we were talking about artificial intelligence in the essay process. And that's one of the reasons you're seeing some changes this year in some of the supplemental essays. A lot of universities are going with shorter essays because they feel that less people will use AI if it's a shorter response. And I personally do not encourage you to write with AI because it's just not going to be able to fully capture you without a lot of feeding. You have to prompt it a lot. You have to feed it a lot. You have to give it so much information that at a certain point, it's like, just write your own essay, man. I feel like it would be better to start with your own story, write your own essay. And if you want to get some ideas as to how to make it better, maybe, put it into ChatGPT and see what sort of corrections it might make. But I would encourage you to write your own work. Most colleges right now don't have a strict ChatGPT policy, but they are making them. And most of the policies are anti-ChatGPT. Having said that, there is no real easy way to detect ChatGPT. So I would encourage you to avoid it because I just don't think it's going to produce a truly great personal essay. I think it can produce something decent, but we want to be better than decent. So that's my personal take. But like, RJ, that's a good question. Like, using AI to try to shorten some of those sentences, like, I wouldn't have a big problem with that. I think if you use it as a tool to improve your work, that's not a big deal, But again, it's a subjective thing. Like, that's how I feel. And we had a big talk about the ethics, and we had different perspectives. There's some people who think, in fact, there's some universities that are talking about making a pro chat GPT policy where they say, if you used it, tell me how. It's okay. Just say, yes, I used it, but here's what I did. I used it to diversify my vocabulary or to fix up my sentences, or I asked it to produce this whole thing, and here's the prompts. So if you do try to use it, I would make a record of what you did. Keep those logs. Don't delete that thread in ChatGPT so that you actually have that data. Because there may be someone interested in hearing how you used it. So there are some progressive, forward-thinking universities right now that are not like completely against it, So just saying, there's some options. All right, so let's go on to the next. I'm trying to get through as many as I can today. We will have another session on September 25th. So if I don't get to your stuff today, that's when we'll get to it next. All right. Got another one here from Nepal. I love Nepal. I love the flag of Nepal specifically. I've never been to Nepal, but I love the flag. I love the fact that it's not rectangles. That's just so cool. Good job, Nepal, for being creative. All right. Okay. All right. So we're describing where you're from a little bit here. Let's see. All right. First human was not created by a human. All right. Father came to the hometown. Okay, a little bit of family culture stuff here. All right. Okay. Obviously, yeah, I get this. Okay, so, we couldn't do DNA testing. All right, but you tell me, okay, then there's this to ease this process has been established. All right, I think it would be cool to tell me a little bit more about this process, like what it does. All right. Okay. I think it's interesting that you're talking about some of the traditions of your culture and like some of those things. And I feel like it could be interesting to contrast those a little bit more with maybe modern life, maybe contrast these a little more with like, how the world operates today. How is there that harmony between your historical traditions and like modern life, All right. So we talk a little bit about your Peace Corps stuff. Okay, it's interesting. Junior Red Cross and things like that too. Turn your grandfather's nails too. And culture and family. All right, so I think this one, similar to what I've seen in a couple of others, this one has a lot of different ideas, and I think it would be good to try to focus on one. Like, I think, for example, you have a really interesting bit about the historical traditions of where you come from, and I think it would be interesting to explore that further. You also talk about some, like things about your family and also some activities that you've done. But I feel like these different experiences lack connections. Okay. So we're kind of in a few different places, and it would be good to focus on one specific thing. Like what do you think out of those experiences, which one says the most about you? And if I want to talk about those traditions, I could talk about those traditions and what they mean to me today, and how, even though maybe I live in a more modern life today, I don't know if that's true, but like, do you still have those traditions in your daily life, or do you have a different kind of life now in maybe a more modernized setting? And how do those traditions impact the way you see the modern world? Like there's ways to maybe develop some of these ideas more. The Peace Corps stuff and like blood donation, I think is a nice detail, but then I wonder what could we say more about that? You mentioned discipline and things and working with community and leadership, but like you could expand on that. You could develop that a lot more. So I feel like we need to pick one of these ideas and develop it more deeply, Postcard, if friends are copying someone else's ideas and paraphrasing them, they're probably not going to get the best results in their applications. I'll be totally honest. If that's the kind of person that you are, that you can't even think for yourself, it's going to be painfully obvious when you have an interview. It's going to be extremely obvious in other essays. And you're not going to have a coherent story. It's not going to look good. They're going to have a harder time. And this is the thing I see so often. People don't want to spend the time on essays. They don't really take the time they should on them. And then they get rejected and they're like, why did I get rejected? I had a great SAT. I had great grades. It's like, well, you also didn't present yourself properly. And like, these essays do matter. For the question here about if your supplement essays are more important than a personal statement, that's going to depend a little bit on the university. I feel like your personal statement is always going to be the most impactful essay because it's the one where you have the most freedom and it says the most about you, and it's the biggest one that you will probably write. So that's where you should put a lot of effort. At the same time, those questions that the university asks are obviously important to the university. Like, they clearly stopped and thought about what questions they wanted to ask you. And so those responses do matter a lot to them. I think right now, the supplementals that maybe matter the most are, ones looking at topics of diversity, because that's a big issue right now in the States ever since affirmative action went away. And there's been a lot of focus on diversity essays this year. So I feel like that's an important one to kind of develop a lot more, because they're looking at that essay. That's a new prompt for some universities this year. So I expect them to be studying those a lot. But yeah, they all matter. But I definitely think your personal statement, especially because it goes out to more places and because it's more personal and because it's bigger, has more importance, So yeah, that's what I think. Like I said, Puskar, as I answered that, I don't know what Gotham thinks on this, but I really don't worry about what other people do. Okay. Focus on yourself always. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. If they, don't just do what other people do in the process, do your own process and do it right. That's how I feel. So Baka, writing about your favorite particular subject and how much, yeah, that could be great. Especially if it ties into what you want to study. Like, that could be a good idea. Write about a subject that fascinates you. Sure. Nothing wrong with that. Let's, pull up another item here. And then I might take just a 2-minute break. Let's see here. This one is called Untitled. Let's open up Untitled. We got a little PDF down here. All right, let's take a look at what we have here. All right, so all right. Okay. Talking about the family situation, mom having to take care of the kids. I was the most stupid kid. All right. Ooh, ouch. Got bad math grades. All right. So here we got like a good low moment in life. We've kind of set up we got a difficult situation at home. We got a difficult situation at school. We got this like low point. If we're going to go to that low point, then we want to jump right back up. We want to sometimes it's good to contrast immediately. Like I would love if I go to like rock bottom, my next paragraph could be like where we are now, where things are so much better. And then we could tell a little bit of how we got to that journey. That way we break up the structure a little bit, so it's not completely linear. It's nice to have a little bit of variety in that flow. If we just do a linear essay, it's a little predictable. If I switch it up and I like show you this worst moment and contrast it immediately with a great moment, it now piques my curiosity. I want to know how we got there, right? So we start talking about that turning point. And so this is what I mean. Like a lot of us, what we'll do is we'll go to rock bottom and then we'll go straight to that next point. Like when we started to turn, when we started to improve. And it could be good to invert that. Let's go to the good result and then go back a little bit more to the turning points and stuff. Right. So we got this, strong statement from Uncle that kind of gets us to redefine sort of our purpose. This is good. Think about what we want to do. And then, okay, so a couple of important moments in 10th grade. All right, and okay. Okay, so the first time you ever actually like did better than those so-called smart kids. Cool. All right. So this could be like a good way to do that contrast. Right here, I'd be like, all right, why don't we fast forward immediately right after this? Right? And be like, I don't know, whatever, 2 or 3 years later, I was the one with the best grade in the class. Now you got my attention. I'm like, ooh, okay, I want to know how you got to that point and what you had to go through, right? The impossible has become I'm possible. I see what you did there. I like that. That's pretty clever. That was a good little play on words. Nicely done. Okay. And then we have to come back here to the drawing that you made at the beginning. All right. This isn't bad. This is pretty good. I think the main thing that would improve this is, like I said, just break up the structure a little bit more, get more creative with the order of events. If your essay is completely linear from start to finish, I would encourage you to think about where you might be able to move some events around and build a little bit more intrigue in your essays, okay? Because you can get a lot when you move things around. It's kind of like, I mean, if you think about a movie, right? You think about movies that build suspense. A lot of times what they do is they cut to like a different character, a different scene. So the good guys are planning something, but then boom, we go over to the bad guys and we see like what they're doing. And so we know there's a counter, and we got that question of like, ooh, will they be able to figure this out? Or like if it's one person's story, that fast forward now leaves me wondering how we got there. And so we want to keep the curiosity of the reader going, especially in the middle. Because again, like I said, beginning and end is where everybody's like going to focus a lot and remember things. But in that middle is where people tend to get bored. So that's a good place to add those changes in your structure, because then it will like keep them engaged more, So RJ, your question about bringing in new culture and language. Look, I think something more unique, like try not to focus on the macro differences of your culture. Like that's what I encourage people to do. For example, with my Peruvian students, a lot of them will talk about food because Peruvians love their food, and we have like world-renowned cuisine. And it's like the first thing that they think of when Peruvians talk to people. They love to talk about their food. And I tell them, look, like if you do that, you and every other Peruvian will talk about your food. What else can you talk about? Is there anything deeper? Anything like regional, local, family? Like if I'm from Pittsburgh, I feel like we would all talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers because we love our football team and we're very passionate about it. That's probably a very common regional thing, but I could go deeper. I could talk about my family and like the work ethic, that I see in my family. And that's something that is a Pittsburgh thing, but it's a little deeper. And I could see it through my family and in myself. Like we work really, 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 really hard and we don't take days off. That's a Pittsburgh thing, man. We probably work too much. It's probably not healthy. So before I go with the big obvious thing that my local culture, my regional, my national culture offers, pick something try to go deeper. Try to go beyond that first obvious thing or two so that you show a different side from what the other people in your country might be showing, So yeah. Am I going to do any more writing sessions for Common App? I am going to do some writing sessions for supplementals soon, actually. And Bangster, you can call me Meacham. I always say, my name is Meacham on the channel, so that's my last name. That's what most people know me by. For many years, I have been Mr. Meacham at school, when I was teaching. So that's how we do. So, all right. So with this one, yeah, I think this is cool, but I would just maybe try to change up the structure, make it a little bit more dynamic so that it, keeps the reader a little more engaged through the middle. Anytime we do like a rock bottom, this is my worst moment essay, it's good to play with that. All right. Okay. We've got Abul Fasil, who was in my Afghanistan meeting on Tuesday as well. Let's take a look at this. Let's see what we got up in here. All right, in limbo. Really tough time. All right, so, started teaching English, okay. And the country situation. All right, so again, we're kind of going straight into like, here's the situation. I had some difficult economic situations and obviously national situations. Obviously the last few years more than the last few years for Afghanistan have not been great in that sense. Okay, used to be this. Like math. Almost got into an accident because of that. All right. All right, so I feel like here you're setting me up for a change. Like you're telling me I used to be this person and I was doing all this stuff. So I'm getting the idea that there had to be something that stopped that. So I'm kind of wondering where that's going to come into here, right? I feel like you're getting into this example stuff and maybe getting a little too specific. Like I kind of want to get into this, I think that this is really the part that could be good to share. Obviously, this is okay. See, this is interesting to me. I don't know about this. I'll be honest. This is like beyond my cultural knowledge here, but this is interesting to me. And I think this could be the thing to build your essay around. Like, I'm willing to bet that most of the people reading this won't know much about this particular group of people. And it could be really interesting to like talk more about that and help them understand, you know, what those differences are and what the specific challenges your group faces. Okay, so someone else got into Vassar and that kind of like inspired you to look for something else here. Art, and then structural engineering. Okay, so you're getting into some of your like interests here. Okay. Okay, done with your bachelor. Okay, so you're looking for a master's program then in this case. I'm assuming if you're talking about this. Okay, interesting. All right, so yeah. So if this is more of a statement of purpose for a master's program, because if you've already done a bachelor's generally in the US, you're going to apply for postgraduate studies. If that's the case, I would say then in those cases, you generally want to focus a little bit more on the things you want to study and what you want to do with that education. But if this is for undergraduate studies, like if you're trying to get a second degree in the US, if you're going for that, then I think that you would want to focus more on this stuff right here. For me, this is like the most impactful part of this essay. And I want us to focus more on who we are today and less on who we were. You know, like you say you used to be these things, and it gets me feeling like maybe you stopped. You weren't. And this is why you stopped. And I would rather spend more time focusing on those obstacles and like how you regained that love and passion for those topics and focus more on who you are today so that we see more of that, because we have a lot of content here that is like past content, like all this, right? While we have, you know, a kind of a quick summary of, you know, you say this new chapter of despair in my life, but then that situation changed. So we kind of skip right through the time where you lost that passion. And if you're going to spend all this space building up that passion and how you used to have it, I would probably expect more detail about what stopped that. And it's kind of missing here. So I would think about restructuring this a little bit. It's interesting, and there's definitely a lot of, you know, a lot of interesting ideas in here. And I definitely want to know more about this stuff. Like I really do, because I think you got to remember, think about what your reader knows and what they won't know. There's a lot of things they won't know. And, you know, while you have typically someone assigned to your region who will know a good bit about your region, they won't know everything. And you want to maybe contextualize a little bit more of that very specific experience that you have. So I think this has a lot of potential, and I would like to learn more about some of those experiences that you touched on there. All right. Let's take a look at the next one here. Got a doc link. Bring this down. Let's go. All right. Can we make this bigger? Yeah. All right. Cool. Let's see. My thigh could talk. Okay. This is interesting. I like the personification of your thigh. And I think this is a really, really good way of describing a speech problem. Like, it was really, like, I understood it immediately with this sentence. I got it like that. Good job. Because those things that are hard to like articulate in words sometimes. And I think that this is like a really, really clear issue. Like I understood it immediately. Good job. Okay. Room fell silent. Yeah, I've seen this, man. I've been in this class. I have had to yell at this person. I've had to tell them to shut up and get out of the room. I've been there. Yeah. Okay. Now this is really good personal like reflections here. Very solid. Okay. Speech therapist. Yeah. Laughing at your own recordings. I do that every week. Okay. See, now this is one of those great times. All right, like I want to talk about this. When I say don't regurgitate your CV, this is one of those times where it makes perfect sense to include a very specific activity and really develop it more here, because obviously this has a huge connection to your personal life. Obviously the motivation is very clear. It makes total sense. Like, I think this is a great time to inject this activity and talk a little bit more about it and your connection to it, And again, I love the specific examples, right, of like individuals, right? These people who got involved, like that really makes it real. I think that's great. Man, you must have been hitting your thigh good. Yeah, I don't know who left this, but I agree. Honestly, this is really solid. This is a really solid essay. 646. I love it. Like, I think this is a great essay in a lot of ways. It's very clear. The language used is very easy for me to follow. You do a really good job of describing your feelings and the way your condition affected you. And it makes perfect sense with the things that you've done afterwards. And like, it's great to see that you've gotten over that and overcome it. And like, bravo, this is great. I really don't want you to change almost anything here. I just feel like this is easy for me to understand. It feels real, and it makes perfect sense from start to finish. I think that's really good. Yeah. The only thing, I mean, if like I'm trying to find something, I'm trying to be hard on you because I want to give you something to improve. I guess the only thing maybe is this about the medicinal chemist thing. Like, maybe this could be phrased a little differently. Like, I understand you kind of wanted to drop your major or drop your area of study in here. But like, you could still change the world that way. Are you interested in looking for like medicines that could help people with stutters? Or, like, could we connect that a little bit more? But like, overall, I like this a lot. And I'm proud of you for getting over your problem and like being able to do this. I can't imagine how frustrating it would have been. I've worked with students who've had that issue, and I know it's hard. And like, I've always had a lot of respect for the people who have to go through those kinds of disorders and issues. Like, it's tough because it really does affect your social life and like your personal perception. And just props to you, man. I wish you the best of luck in this. Like, really. Good essay. Yeah. A real good test, honestly, after this day will be like, which one of your essays do I remember the most? Because I'm going through so many. So, all right, we've got this one that was sent in both Word and PDF. So we'll do the Word version because that's just better. All right, let's see what we got here. All right. Oh, we got a name down at the bottom. All right, honey, thank you. Let's see what we got. 427 words, I noticed right away. Thank you for leaving the prompt. By the way, all right, so this is... I wonder if this is a supplemental or something. It might be. I don't know. But whatever. We'll look at it. You may need a word. I don't know what your word count would be unless, like, on this one. But let's just see what we got real quick. All right. So, yeah, the room essay. The room essay was cool. I remember, I'm thinking about the wires and the rooms. Yeah, the wires stood out to me too. I think because it breaks it down. And also, like, okay, the, hacker essay of having those broken down sections that are like really clearly labeled, it kind of helps me compartmentalize the story and remember it in smaller pieces instead of like one big piece. So I can think about that bedroom changing a few different times. I can think about those different wires, and I won't remember what all of them meant, but I remember green was nature and like red was entertainment. I think like I remember some of those details now. So I think like sometimes that's why I like those structures that kind of, on that topic, I actually checked another score essay yesterday off stream, but the writer used different injuries. It opened up the story by saying I've broken 7 bones, and like tells 3 or 4 of those stories and how each one impacted them. So it was interesting to see like how each injury led to a lesson. And so I remember like, oh, you broke your ankle playing basketball, and like you had to recover, and okay, you broke like an arm in an accident, and like there were different lessons with each one that was kind of interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff here. What's up, Ryan? Good to see you. Okay, so different perspective on the above topic, although you're saying, okay, optimism is more important. I'm guessing this is a supplemental for somewhere. It would be helpful to know kind of where this is going to go and maybe what word count they gave. And then you're setting up your choices for this. Okay, so kind of setting up a good argumentative essay structure, which makes sense for a question like this. Like if they ask you, what's more important, success or being happy and optimistic in the face of failure, then yeah, you're going to want to pick a side, right? And this is good. You've explained your statement, your main reason, and then going into these other examples. Now, this is a really strong example. Like, damn, okay. So, yeah, that's a strong point to make. So I like your point about how like success is fleeting. People could, take advantage of it or not. And so here's someone who has. And I guess I would say personal like examples too. We want some personal examples here. If this is a supplemental for a university, it's good that you can refer to some other examples that you've seen, but like, what does it mean to you, right? What do you feel about failure? Can we talk about one of your failures where you remained optimistic? Can we talk about a success you had that maybe wasn't as fulfilling as you thought it would be? If your position is more on the side of happy and optimistic, let's connect that more to some personal examples. I think that's important. Like if you can do that, you're going to have a better outcome here. All right, so that is my second sheet of sticky notes. I think we're going to get, if you sent me your essay today in the stream, I'm probably not going to get to you today because I got about 10 more minutes I got here before I got to get going because I got another meeting starting up soon. But we're doing really good stuff here. I like what we got. I got like 3 more written down that have been sent to me in previous days. So let's get on those right now. All right. I'm having fun with this, everybody. I want to thank you all for sending your stuff. It's fun. All right. Okay, this is a specific case. We've got Dublin College University. Interesting. All right. So if you're sending this specifically to one university, then that's fine. You can go ahead and, shout out the name and make it clear that this is going to the right destination. Obviously, word of advice, if you write an essay for one university and you go to use it for another, just, be mindful that you change everything correctly. Don't just copy paste. Be careful with that because there's nothing worse than making it obvious that you accidentally sent the wrong essay. Okay, so we're looking at a degree in business here. And this is good. By the way, Irish and British essays are quite different from your American essays. So if anybody here is considering applying to like the UK or to Ireland, you will find that the essays are a much different style. Generally there, you want to explain why you're a good candidate for that major, for that program. And I always encourage people to think like, okay, relevant experiences, grades in courses that are related to that major, what characteristics would a good professional in that field have, and how can you demonstrate them in your essay? So UCAS essays for the UK are much more like brag. Go ahead and brag about your qualifications. Go ahead and talk about what makes you a great candidate for admission to that major. I actually, in my YACAC conference 2 years ago in Albuquerque, I attended a session where a British essay reviewer and an American essay reviewer stood side by side and debated their different approaches as to why they preferred their approach over the other. And, the conclusion of the whole thing was like, hey, just make sure your students understand there are 2 very different approaches to these essays. And the British-Irish approach is definitely more about your achievements and why you fit the major, whereas the American approach is more holistic, more, I want to get to know you as a person. I've already got enough information about you academically, so I want to hear about you personally, okay? So I want to see some reasons why you would be a good fit for a business program here. You talk about assisting others and volunteering work. Now, this is good, but again, I mean, if you start off with this idea of a field of business, I might want to be a little more going into that first. So we talk about like volunteering after some natural disasters and floods. Okay. And I think, all right, this is good, to have these values. We do need those values in business. Okay. Some personal details about like what other activities you like. Okay. This is kind of what I want to get to though. Like, why do you care about business and what do you want to do with it? You talk about your career work, your coursework, and then English language. And they do like it when you mention a little bit of your English skills. They like to see that you can handle it. Okay. And then some goals. Long-term goals is good. All right. Okay. And wanting to do like a food chain here. Interesting. All right. And then you talk about why this university. Okay. I mean, I would say I don't know what the word count is for Dublin College University here, but 958's a lot. But see what they ask for. If they ask for like 2 pages, then I guess you're kind of this is like almost a 3-pager, I think. So because you would have 1, 2. Okay, it's 2. You got it in 2. All right, cool. Yeah, I think this is solid. I would just maybe think about the order of things. Like you kind of start with like the volunteering stuff and personal interests, which I might put later. I would probably go first to talk about some of the like business related things, focus a little bit more on your relationship to that major and go right into that. And I think you could talk more about like, what you want to do with it right away. And then you may also want to get more specific into the program that they offer at that university. Like what courses or what experiences do they offer that you think are good for you specifically for this university? Like, why do you really want to go here and not other places? And I wouldn't necessarily reference this stuff, because it really just says, okay, you're good. They know they're good. What is it specifically about the university that you think is good? A lot of this stuff feels like what they put in their marketing. It's very generic. It's like, it's a good destination. You got high scores. You're a top 1% university. You shouldn't just want to go to the university because it's good. There should be something in the curriculum, professors, courses, other experiences they offer that matter to you. Get specific. I often compare this to like, and I'm going to use an example that's a little more applicable to guys, but I think it makes sense for girls. It's like if a person tells you that they like you because you're pretty, I would like to think that you would say, all right, but what about like what's on the inside? And that's kind of what this is. Oh, you're pretty. You have a good ranking. You have, the number 1 program. You have really, the best, whatever. Like, okay, that's exterior features. That's like pretty. What about the personality of the place? What about the people in the place? What about the courses, the things they like to do? Like, you should love somebody or a university for more than just their superficial characteristics. And universities feel that. So I would definitely encourage you, if you write an essay for a specific college, to like really get into the things that college offers specifically, and not just its position or its ranking or just because it's the best. It's the best is not a great reason to choose a university, to be totally honest. Is it the best for you? And that depends on other factors. All right. So, okay, I got one in here that says my Common App essay. Let's go. All right. Unleaded egg dough. Aroma connected to me. All right. Okay. I think somebody sent me this as a comment in one of the videos about an essay about noodles. All right. Cool. Cold Monday. It's Lee King's birthday celebration. Nigerians is something. All right. A lot of noodles. Okay. All right, so he shared noodles for his birthday. Interesting. Yeah. Start saving money. Wahan. Okay. Miss Alice got the ramen. Love me some ramen. Oh, ramen is so good. I loved eating ramen in Japan when I was there. That was the best time. So good. All right. Okay. Interesting. Kind of the significance of ramen compared to like other food items. And now we all love noodles. Okay. All right. Referencing it in culture and stuff. Okay. So I think we need more personal detail here. This is an interesting topic. I like the idea of using noodles as a topic. But I would think more about personal memories that I have related to those moments. Like, was there a moment where you were just so dead tired and you stood there like slurping your noodles and it just made you feel better? Was there a moment where you shared some with an important friend or a family member or something? Like, I want to know more about those significant personal moments with noodles, if we're going to use noodles as an essay. Like, you talk a lot about other people, what, like, you see it in other cultures, you know, see the significance of it in the Korean culture. Like, you're talking a lot about other people's relationships with noodles or the significance of noodles, but you want to talk about yourself. So my advice here with the noodles thing is like, what are the personal connections? Like, if I were going to do an essay about ramen noodles, I would definitely think about like the time I stood up and ordered them in Japan and how, you know, it was like the best lunch I ever had. It just restored my energy, made me like desire to spend more time. And I actually started thinking about living in Japan while I was sitting there eating ramen. Like, no joke. I was flying back from Japan, writing down my plans to move there. If it weren't for SCORE, I would have gone to Japan. No joke. I literally was like SCORE had just started when I went to Japan. So it was nothing then. It was a little side hustle. And I was like, I don't really need to do that forever. Whatever. And now, like, here I am. So life is weird. But the point is, I would focus on those significant personal moments with that thing that I want to talk about, not just about the thing. You don't want to make an essay about noodles. You want to make an essay about noodles and you, how you and the noodles are connected. Okay, so that's what I think needs to change here. We need more focus on you and less on the history of noodles and the cultural uses of noodles and like other things about noodles. Okay, but it is a cool topic and I like it. I think you should use that topic. I think you should think about what those moments are for you, and then, you know, you could actually put something together really well here. All right, so RJ in the chat, you were the last one on my list today, dude. You made it, all right? So congratulations, RJ. Let's see. All right. So let's see what we got here. All right. Talking the shape there. All right, so you're drawing on something. You're doing some art. You know what? I love that you acknowledge this right away. I love that you acknowledge this because I've been a witness to this on the channel. I've seen this a lot in personal like dealings with, you know, Asian families and stuff. It is real. It is a big thing. And I think sometimes it's the elephant in the room with a lot of applications from those students. Like, you should show self-awareness, and being aware of this fact and being able to talk about it is a good thing for your essays. So I like that you actually acknowledge this stereotype outright, address it, point out the elephant in the room. Okay. Appreciate your patience, RJ, by the way. Respect to you, man. Thank you for sticking in and waiting. I know it's getting late for y'all. Okay. So those are your parents' expectations and your motivations. Makes sense. Right. Okay. And this is real, man. I think this is real. And this is something a lot of people don't feel like they can say. So I think it's good that you're going there. Go to the place that might seem scary, you know? Okay. Yeah. I love this. Sketch my way to awards. That's a nice phrase. That's a nice phrase right there. I like it. Okay. Yeah, that fear. I've noticed that's a recurring theme today. I've seen a lot of people talking about like how fear was driving a lot of their experiences as opposed to a genuine motivation or like a positive motivation. I think it's good that we're acknowledging that. I think it's good that we're overcoming our fears. It's important to face your fears, and it's important to like be aware of them and talk about how you address them. So, all right, another. Ooh, man, yeah. Damn. Brutal. Don't let me down. Ooh. All right, so time. Okay, we're going like very detailed, time by time here. Like, I kind of like the way this changes the pacing of the essay. Like we went from like a bigger macro thing of like long-term experiences to like down to the hour, like an episode of 24. It's kind of cool. That's a good way to like break up the structure. drew some birds. Okay. Yeah. All right. So there was some positivity here. That gives me some hope, right? Okay. All right. I like this. A good moment where you just did something for you, not for mom or dad. Very cool. All right. I like this a lot. I like this a lot. I think, I feel like this is really good because it acknowledges that truth that a lot of times we don't talk about. And, this stuff about family expectations and stuff. I'll be honest with you guys. Like I have this perspective as someone who has worked with a lot of people from a lot of different places and who reads a lot of essays and talks to a lot of you all on WhatsApp and stuff. And like, I don't want to overgeneralize or oversimplify because I know you all are unique individuals, but there is definitely this thing of like the Asian mom a lot of times or the Asian dad a lot of times. And it's something that's real. And I think that it sometimes hurts a lot of applications because, we get so caught up in the winning awards and like doing all these activities and getting perfect grades and stuff that we forget to like discover who we are. And we do things for other people instead of doing them for ourselves. And for me, I can relate a lot to that feeling. I think in every culture we have that problem, but it just takes different forms. I think in a lot of times in Asian culture, it tends to be more about that high achievement, high academic achievement. In my case, it was a very religious thing. It was like I had to conform to my family's religious ideals to make them happy. And I did a lot of things in my life just for that reason, not because I genuinely believed them or not because I genuinely wanted to do them. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that reality, to like be real about it, because they should understand that you've discovered yourself in a way and that you have broken away from that. And so by acknowledging it and addressing it and showing me that moment where you had that realization, I think that's great. And I really like it a lot. And I would tell you to send this for sure. So yeah, really good work, guys. All right. So anyway, that is all the time I have for today. I'm happy I managed to get through everything that I had on my list before today. If you sent me your essays today, I have another session coming up on the 25th, and I will be knocking out more of them then. Sorry if I wasn't able to get to yours today, but tried to do as much as I could in a couple of hours. I got a lot of meetings today and like life and a work event all day next week or next weekend. So it's been a lot of fun reviewing these though. And I definitely want to do more of these sessions as we go like through the application process this year. I want to do some supplemental like essay writing on the weekends as well. Maybe like a supplemental Saturday or Sunday. We'll see. I'm going to figure that out and I will make some posts on the channel, let you know when those will be. But the next session will be on September 25th for essays. Also, October 5th, SAT. I got a huge thing coming up. I have found a bunch of practice tests that I think you're going to want to see. And I'm going to publish a video that I'm working on right now in a couple of weeks about that. But I'm going to do a live stream practice test from this website so that you can see the material for yourself and also laugh at my terrible ability to do math. So if you want to, like check that out, please make sure you're subscribed, have the notifications on, and I will see you next time I publish a video or on the next live on the 25th. Thank you all so much and have a great day.